Good evening, one and all. We welcome you to the international webinar series on holistic health, well-being, and sustainable development. On occasion of World Social Work Month and World Health Month 2022, and commemorating Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, nation celebrating 75 years of independence, an international conference on social work and sciences towards One Health and Sustainable Development 2022 in collaboration with Sri Holistic Health Foundation India and Sri Research Institute and Center for Art, Sciences and Wellbeing. Before we start our proceedings, let's take the blessings from Almighty.
कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शत्रुबुद्धिविनाशाय दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते दीपज्योतिर्नमोऽस्तुते शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः शुभं कुरुत्वं कल्याणम् आरोग्यं धनसम्पदः
With the blessings of Almighty, we shall continue towards today's session. Today we have with us Christina Kagin, who is a professional social worker from Nigeria, Africa. She has practiced extensively in medical social work, in hospital setting, community development, and also services in communities, and also forensic social work with the Nigerian Prison Service and psychiatric and mental health as clinical social worker till date. So we welcome you, ma'am, once again to the international webinar series, and over to you for your presentation on trauma and resilience, recovering from traumatic events. Over to you. Yeah, you can unmute yourself. Yeah.
Good day, everyone.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Doctor, for the introduction. I beg to stand on the existing protocol. My name is Christiana Kigun, like Doctor have introduced. I go straight to my discussion. I'm talking on trauma and resilience. And I find it very interesting and important to talk about trauma and resilience at this time because the need for trauma healing or the need to build resilience is not only needed in Nigeria or Africa, but all over the world. We have had impacts of traumatic experiences ranging from pandemics. The most recent is recently battled COVID-19, which ravaged or had impact on almost all the countries of the world. I'll go straight to my discussion. I started the discussion with a brief definition of what trauma is, and I said trauma is the response to a deeply is a reaction that presents a response to a deeply distressing or disturbing event that overwhelms an individual's ability to cope, and it causes the feelings of helplessness, diminishes their sense of self and their ability to feel a full range of emotions and experience. It does not discriminate. Trauma does not discriminate. It cuts across everyone and it can affect everyone. A World Mental Health Survey conducted by the World Health Organization found that at least a third of the more than 125,000 people surveyed in 26 different countries had experienced one form of trauma or the other. That number rose to 70% when the group was limited to people experiencing core disorders as defined by the DSM-5. The classification found in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorder, 4th edition. But those numbers are just, for instance, that have been reported. The actual number is probably much more higher than what have been said. While there are no objective criteria to evaluating which event will cause post-traumatic symptoms or circumstances typically involve the loss of control, betrayal, abuses of power, helplessness, pain, confusion, or losses, and altered experiences. For example, altered experiences could mean death of a loved one, change in status, and difficult experiences. This could cause alteration in existence. And traumatic situations that causes post-traumatic symptoms vary quite dramatically from person to person. So trauma can lead to mental health breakdowns like depression, even to the core mental illnesses like schizophrenia. Also, common responses, and I would like to talk about some common responses and symptoms of trauma that can be commonly seen in our day-to-day interactions, like expressions of sadness stems from trauma, accumulated trauma in persons, and it differs in degree. Also, expression of anger, most times excessive anger without no obvious reason, can be traced to trauma. And also denial, living in denial, living in ambiguity. You know, people having very ambiguous thoughts and feelings that are unrealistic could be as a result of traumatic experiences. And also expression of fear. Most times these fears are unrealistic, like the fear of the unknown, most often. And also expression of shame without any reason. This may lead to having nightmares, insomnia, difficulty with relationships, emotional outbursts unnecessarily, usually negative emotions. Common physical symptoms can also present as having nausea, dizziness, altered sleep patterns, either sleeping more or sleeping less, having excessive headaches without obvious cause, and also gastrointestinal problems, having psychological disorders such as PTSD, depression, anxiety, dissociation, substance abuse problems. For some people, largely, they find a way to self-medicate so they could feel better from these traumatic symptoms presented above. So I'll move straight to also looking at when symptoms last more than, I am taking time to give this background so that trauma can produce other or degenerate to disposing the individual or the persons that are having the unresolved trauma to other, exposing them to other. Having said this, I'll go straight to my main topic, which is trauma and resilience. And of course, it only takes someone that is broken to require the building up resilience to cope with life issues or to cope with life in the future. The experience of trauma is simply not the rare exceptions we once considered it to be. So usually, before now, people have different notions about trauma, but now it has a lot involved in its expression. Like we talked about mental illnesses. Before now, research hadn't gotten to this point, so people saw trauma as something else. But we are having ongoing researches, and people are experiencing it more with the crises and social problems that are increasing day by day. People are experiencing more traumatic episodes and living them daily. Also, over the last few decades, there has been a growing awareness of how traumatic experiences can significantly affect our health and well-being. This awareness, coupled with research showing that trauma is relatively pervasive, has led to an increased focus on providing children, adults, and families with services and support that are specifically designed to be comfortable, accessible, and effective for people who have experienced trauma. Now, it is surprising to find out that even childhood experiences can go a long way to explain traumatic experiences and mental health disorders in adulthood. So take, for instance, a child who had experienced childhood trauma like neglect, parental neglect, abuse of any form, can grow up to become an antisocial or become an adult with problematic behaviors. For example, the commonest problematic behaviors could be problematic substance use. So the common thing, or the obvious thing the society is seeing is an antisocial adult, and not connecting it with that childhood that was not properly attended to. So research has proven that there's a there's a relationship between childhood trauma and adult and behavior or life in the future. Within fields such as mental health and child welfare, it has become increasingly common to hear about trauma-specific or trauma-informed approaches, and much has been written about how to infuse principles of trauma-informed care within settings such as the criminal justice system, child welfare, and schools. People who have experienced trauma to go through trauma healing and sessions with trained personnel or facilitators in order to help them build resilience. Resilience is a way of building human capacity, helping you cope in the face of challenges, to help you align your life and help you align life and live purposefully in life. And thankfully, we have trained professionals in this field. I'm fortunate to be not just a social worker, but trained, an advanced trained trauma healing facilitator here in Nigeria. And I'm also fortunate to be a trained trauma healing facilitator for both adults and children. And a lot is coming out from these researches and this in trauma and resilience. How can we promote resilience and recovery for people who have experienced traumatic events? The experience of trauma simply is simply not rare exceptions. We once considered it is part and parcel of our social reality. Unfortunately, trauma have come to stay with us, so it's good for people to know how to navigate, how to cope around trauma in order to survive. And one of the ways that have been found very helpful is to help people that have experienced trauma build resilience. Now, I want to be practical. For people, for example, coming out from the COVID-19 pandemic with the lockdown, a lot happened during this pandemic. For the first time, we're having a shutdown almost all around the world at the same time. And I have my friends over, my friend and my sister, Florence in India. Sometimes I call to ask her, how are you coping with in the face of the pandemic? And she would tell me they are working from home, or they are going to, when the pandemic began to be better, and then lockdowns are getting better, the government began to lock down. People go to the field using the became new, and people needed to cope even with the new order. So it became like people commonly refer to such situations as living with the new normal. It became the new normal because we needed to survive. We needed to live with this new normal because life must go on. And without resilience, people cannot cope. People cannot function better. And we had a lot of people that had difficulty adjusting to these new orders, new changes, and they developed other problems, other antisocial problems. People took to risky habits that make the experience of trauma. There has been a growing awareness of health and well-being. This awareness, pervasive, has led to an increased focus on providing children. Okay, that has been said earlier. Can be any extremely stressful, resulting in fear, horror, helplessness of experiences to be traumatic, such as natural disasters, like I have mentioned. And the common one I chose to use was the pandemic that ravaged the entire world at some point. And then some countries are still having reinfection rates and are also battling with non-compliance to the guides that are made to help curtail or prevent spread of COVID-19. So issues like accidents, serious illnesses, fire disasters, war-related violence, crime, bullying, domestic violence, sexual violence, traumatizing. And one very traumatizing or one very traumatic event that is very common in my country here in Nigeria is the farmer-herder clashes, where we have cases, daily recorded cases of attacks on farmers. So it is becoming more difficult for farmers to go to their farms and grow their crops for the fear of being attacked by the herders. And increasingly, people have died as a country very devastated. Now, trauma does not just happen to an individual. Trauma has ripple effects on other survivors. So if trauma is something tragic, one has not had a traumatic event ever in his life, the trauma of one other person can go a long way to affect the other person that is not directly involved. And that is termed secondary trauma. So the trauma in itself is categorized into two. The primary trauma and secondary trauma. And the primary trauma is that which is directly affects an individual and a person, or has a direct impact on the person. Take, for example, the loss of a dear one by an individual. That constitutes a primary trauma because it affects the person directly. The loss of a valuable item, the loss of a job, the loss of a farm, the loss of anything that constitutes valid to anybody can generate or can induce psychological trauma in the individual. Then also, the secondary trauma is that which does not happen to one directly, but has happened. But the person has witnessed that traumatic event. For example, being in a neighborhood where there's a violent attack, because we talked about attacks being one of the causes of trauma. So being in an environment that has experienced violent attacks, that can put one in a situation of experiencing secondary trauma. So either way, people are traumatized daily, either directly or indirectly. And so it means that the need to build resilience is almost on a daily basis, a needed aspect of life. Also, we know that trauma rates are high. National community-based surveys find that 50 to 90% of adults have experienced at least one traumatic event, with some studies finding an average of nearly 5 traumatic events occurring in their lifetimes. However, it is difficult to arrive at a consistent estimate of trauma exposure. Variability in research methods, definition of trauma and study populations make it difficult to state exactly how prevalent trauma is. Some studies have explored the prevalence of trauma within specific service settings, finding a high representation of people with a history of trauma. For example, some studies have estimated that at least 90% of people receiving mental health services have a trauma history. Prevalence rates have also been found to be high in areas such as juvenile justice, child welfare, homeless shelters, and substance use treatment programs. That I have said in my opening discussion, that trauma has a direct and indirect link with mental health disorder. So looking at the rate of daily traumatic experiences, that percentage for individuals have been stated, and it is said that 90% of persons have experienced one form of traumatic experience or the other. Now, for daily exposure to traumatic events puts people at risk of coming down with one form of mental health challenge or the other. The commonest of it is depression, which people go through every day and unattended to most most of the time. So if it does not restrict or if it does not affect your daily functioning, you think you are strong enough until it gets to a severe state where people begin to exhibit or express more. That's when most people attend to such conditions. Now, it is not even about people wanting to attend to their health needs or not, but most times, like in developing countries, most times people even lack the financial resource to pursue or to seek medical help. So daily, people are taught other ways to build resilience, like staying together if depending on what religion you practice, you practice your religion more, and it helps you to daily cope. And of course, there are basic coping strategies like having to do the things that you love to do, keep good companies, keep good circle of friends that will rather encourage you or not to discourage you about life. Stay positive, have positive self-talk, read books that are rather motivating and not books that will expose you to very discouraging stories or issues that will make one life and give up on himself. Clinical social worker practice in the field of mental health for over a decade. I have had the opportunity to meet people that will tell you life does not mean anything, that will tell you there's no use to living. Why? Because they have been told that they are useless. They have been told that they cannot amount to anything. So when you dissociate yourself from such negativity, it helps you build resilience. It helps you cope better. And building resilience does not just happen by accident. It is an intentional step to take. It is an intentional thing to do. So you consciously wake up in the morning and tell yourself that I choose to do this with my life. I choose to be productive with myself. And also align yourself with legal and productive things that rather build you or not destroy you. And unfortunately, we have as a coping strategy and not anything to help them to produce and you can. We are most times fortunate to be people that are more family oriented. We are more closely knitted. So we have the benefit of having good social support, unlike other people that have other values other than family values, you know. So we have a privilege of having one another. So most times when one is breaking down, when things are getting tough, family come together to support each other cope better. So that's also another strength in one strength that we have in helping us build daily resilience. Sometimes it doesn't come easy. Sometimes you feel life is not fair. Are you the only one living? Are you the only one that God is not fair to? But it is also not out of context to feel the way you want to feel, because pain is real. Pain is real, and these situations are also real. So most times, people just need to find healthy ways to cope. And most likely, and thankfully, we have our profession which is helping in this regard, which is helping people discover their potential, helping people find resources even within internal resources rather than external. So you use your internal resources or staying positive, finding your interest, your purpose, pursuing them, also trying to build yourself and focus every. Take for instance the COVID-19 pandemic. It wasn't easy. Let me see myself as a caregiver. I had the license around helpful to go visit people, but it was easy. Go to the field, teach people in clusters or to a lot of people at the same time because of the risk in vaccine the virus. So most times staying home. I'm back. I'm sorry. The network. I had a network glitch. Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, Christina, continue. Please continue. Welcome back. Can you hear me?
Hello? Yeah, I'm sorry, I had a network glitch. Actually, I can hear you right now.
Yeah, you can continue.
Oh, okay, thank you, doctor. So during the COVID-19, even as a caregiver, I was traumatized. I was traumatized because I didn't have the opportunity to reach out. Most times we talk on the phone and people tell you they are going through ABC situation. They are going through difficulty coping with life. They don't have what to eat because there's a lockdown for a week. People cannot access markets. And because they are not financially buoyant enough to stock their homes, to stock food in their houses, life became very difficult. Now, as a caregiver, I had trauma because I had all of that from my clients and the people I was working with, I was directly working with. Now, as caregivers, we will all attest to the fact that we progressively get used to the patients, to the people that we work with, to the point that they no longer become like our clients or no longer become like our patients, but they become more like a family to us because those are the people we spend most times with. Now, I am not overlooking the aspect of non-emotional involvement as it just connect. That's love for humanity more because of what we do together. So basically, I find it interrelated when I talk about trauma and resilience. Yes, trauma on the other side stands on its own. Resilience on the other side stands on its own, but they are twins. They are brothers of circumstances. Now, for you to function well as a human being, traumatic episodes will only wreck a person, will only make somebody a shadow of himself. So resilience is key in growing up and in becoming the human being that life desires you to be. Also, resilience on the other side is something that should happen often, should be pursued, even if it requires selling part of you're right. This is just on a lighter note, but it just helps me explain the importance of daily building of our resilience, even as practitioners, because we experience secondary trauma daily. Okay, let's move on. Trauma can have significant and widespread impacts, like I have said, and how someone is affected by a traumatic experience can vary tremendously based on factors such as the person's age, the type of event and experience, the social support they have. The first factor, which talked about age, and it's now connecting us back to the issue of childhood trauma. So as an adult who has experienced trauma, the response, because of life experience within the span of the age, helps the person cope differently, not better, but it helps the person respond to that traumatic event differently than a younger age. But this is not to say that adults, older people cannot be broken, cannot be affected badly by a traumatic event of their life. So we don't go with the mindset that at this age, you are big enough to handle this. Just like you cannot be big, you cannot be old to break down mentally. You cannot be old to cry. You cannot be too old to be emotional, to shed tears, to be hurt by a situation. That is how people cannot be too big or too old to go through traumatic episodes or exhibit any of the traumatic symptoms that have been explained above. But it says, this point says that people respond or people experience trauma based on the following factors: the person's age, the type of event experienced, the social support. Now, the issue of social support is coming up. So it makes it very important, even in a society where they don't believe in family. Like I cherish, that's one thing I cherish about the Indians, the family and social support system that is so strong. So there's nothing about, oh, I have grown up, I want to go to my own house, build my house and live in isolation. No. You stay together. It has a way it comforts one another when there is need for one another. So one of the enhancers of resilience, one of the great influencing factor of building resilience is that social support, that strong social support. Also, we also have we have coping strategies of the individual. So different people face the same situation and respond to it differently. So most times people don't generalize reactions. We individualize it. Okay, if these two people, two different individuals faces the same traumatic experiences, they respond to it differently. That's one thing that research have shown. So some people come out stronger and some people come out with so much difficulty. That is the reason individualizing support in terms of providing support for traumatized persons. You don't generalize to say, how come you are struggling to come out of this when these other people have long passed this level? No, it is not allowed. It is not healthy, and it is not a good approach to providing support and care for traumatized people or supporting them build resilience. They need, every traumatized person needs to be handled as an individual. Symptoms or impacts may appear immediately following a traumatic event or may emerge over time. So symptoms that we have talked about, symptoms of sleeplessness, which is insomnia. One of it is loss of appetite, headaches, even mental health breakdown. Symptoms can appear at different times. Sometimes it happens almost immediately the trauma has happened, or the person, the individual has experienced traumatic events. Sometimes it happens later. But of course, to be safer, it's good to know all of this. But the focal point is there is hope because there's a place of resilience. So people with good resilience cope better. There are paths, there are channels, there are processes to attaining resilience, and resilience does not just happen automatically. Just like people build their coping strategies, something happens. Now, for the first time, we have experienced the COVID-19 pandemic. We don't pray and we don't look forward to it coming up again in the magnitude it came. But it has taught us something. There is a lesson that we have learned as a result of experiencing the COVID-19 pandemic. So a lot of measures needs to be in place daily and consciously. Just like we plan for the future, that is how daily it is important to build coping mechanisms that eventually helps us build resilience to challenges. At this point, I would like to pause here to get feedback so I can so we can move together if there is. Hello.
Yeah, Christina. So you are done with
Can
the
I-
presentation?
No, I'm not done.
Yeah, you can
I
continue.
can go on.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So it say in continuation, it says in some, but certainly not all cases, serious mental health outcomes such as post-traumatic stress disorders can emerge. While there is broad variety research which has been found that trauma can have negative impacts on sense of safety, emotional self-regulation, ability to understand emotional experiences. So it makes people very numb and makes people react abnormally to pain. So, like ability to understand emotional experiences, adjust or manage emotions, such as not having good self-concept, perception of control, long-term physical health issues. People begin to experience simple physical health conditions like headaches, incident headaches that just continues to happen. These are some of the symptoms of trauma, but largely the safest and the healthiest way to navigate through that would be to chart the path of building a strong resilience that will help. Now, building resilience does not make one immune of future occurrences or future exposure to traumatic events, but it just helps you navigate healthily to a safe place where the impact is obvious of the strong and good impact of trauma or traumatic event is usually not life-threatening, or it is less in degree. While traumatic events can occur at any age, those that occur during childhood can be especially important with the potential for more significant and long-lasting impact. Now, back to childhood. I am very particular about this because I got to know this lately. So most times children are neglected, children's needs are overlooked. Let's give a practical, let's look at a practical scenario. For example, in a family circle where somebody dies, an adult dies, let's say a father dies. In Africa, most of the time we see adults telling children that the person that have died traveled, or the person went to another place, the person will come back. So these children are left in the dark. Their needs and feelings are not taken into consideration. So this whole idea about their children, what do they know, makes adults treat children like that. And we realize that even when serious decisions are made, children are not considered. Children are always asked to go, to they're sent away from those circles or where serious decisions are taken. So when these children confront real situations, they don't have the capacity, they don't have the ability to cope well because they are not equipped, because they don't know what to do in those situations. That is one instance that I wouldn't want to bore you with so many very absurd ways children are neglected in most countries, even here in Nigeria where I live. So, but of course, research is showing that children also go through traumatic episodes or go through a have traumatic experiences just like adults have. So the need of adults as regards trauma equals the needs of children who have experienced traumatic events. Now, in the opening discussion, I talked about how children should grow up to become abnormal or adults that have difficulty functioning normally. But of course, the place of the building of resilience, it's made available for both adults and children. So one of the channels, one of the ways provided, like in the field of practice of trauma healing that I have ventured into in the course of my practice, helps us to see that some of the ways people can heal healthily from traumatic episodes and build good level of resilience is by owning up to their pain, is by agreeing to talk about it, not in a way that re-traumatizes them, but in a way that makes them heal. For example, research have also shown that there are instances and there are times allotted to responses to traumatic events, and time allotted to responding to people that have experienced trauma or traumatized a person. For example, immediately a trauma happens, it is not ideal to respond with psychosocial support or psychosocial support. So that's talk therapy with the survivor of this trauma within 75 hours. Because what trauma does, it alters the brain functioning. It numbs. Immediately a trauma happens, the brain response to it is it shuts down. The brain shuts down immediately before it begins to process the situation. Now, most of the time, when something happens, people react either out of when traumatic event happens. The survivors respond in different ways. One of the ways that research have shown that people respond to it is that they freeze. They freeze for some time. For some people, they fight. Trauma responses. The trauma responses we have freeze, we have fight, and we have flight. So the freeze response, the person just freezes in the face of the situation. So even the brain can freeze in the face of trauma, where the person loses the ability to even think rationally immediately it has happened. So people are allowed to process their trauma and then be ready to talk about what has happened to them. So one of the approaches to helping people heal and build resilience is to help them talk about their pain, having processed their trauma, having processed what has happened to them. Secondly, you allow the people cry, express emotion. So sometimes, for example, in Africa where I am, when somebody loses a loved one or somebody is traumatized and he's crying, the commonest thing that people say to the person is, don't cry, stop crying. If you're a Christian, they tell you, don't cry like an unbeliever. Don't cry like you don't have hope. But also, we provide support for people. Being a caregiver and a trained social worker, I am trained to support any religion that I come across, as long as there's a need to support the person. So now, religion aside, as a caregiver, how to help somebody heal healthily, how to help somebody build resilience is to listen to the person. Now, of course, religion. So you support the person based on what he believes. So the person believes in God. It's another. It's one of the tools or one of the is to take in supporting the being as cope with your pain is a strong supporting anyone that is going through trauma and going towards building. So at this trauma eventuality, sometimes people cannot wait traumatic event. Because if we know that, if we all agree that the loss of a dear one, the loss of any valuable thing can cause a trauma, then we know that it is eventual. It is something that must happen by creating awareness, by sensitizing them, and educating them and helping them know that this is what trauma is. Some people don't know that they know that the loss of a loved one causes pain, but they don't know to what degree. They don't know that it has a name called trauma. So this is trauma. and that is what the trauma information is about. We looked at a trauma-informed society and a trauma-sensitive society. So as caregivers, as professionals, can we begin to explore this a new field? It is not like new in its context, but it is beginning to come up as research is ongoing. People are beginning to realize that, no, this is more helpful. This is a more healthy way to cope in the face of pain, in the face of trauma. So can people begin to know about what trauma is, even in India and other countries of the world? Because that, whether we are prepared or not, trauma does not tell us when it will happen. We woke up to the news of Ukraine and Russia. How many lives were gone? What has happened to the survivors, and what will happen to more and more and more of survivors that we will have from these both human and natural disasters that keeps happening in this world? So the need to build resilience has become a key and a necessary part to chart and something to consider. Something that will continue toward is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christina, for a wonderful session on trauma, resilience, and how to bounce back from trauma.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Doctor.
Very insightful.
Thank you very much.
Participants, if you have any queries, you can raise your hand, or you can put in chat box, or you can unmute yourself. If you are unable to unmute, raise your hand. We'll unmute from our side. Yeah, Mary, ma'am.
Hi, Krishna.
Hi, Mary. Thank you so much for attending.
Yeah, and you gave a lot of insights about women and child department, trauma, a lot of incentives, a lot of takeaway points. You have a lot of knowledge, so I don't have any doubts from my side, just appreciation. So I heard your talk fully today, so I learned a lot of things from you. So all the best for your life and all the best for your next session. Congratulations.
Thank you very much for the opportunity and for your audience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mary, ma'am. Any other participants would like to interact? They can feel free to interact, comment, or provide their observation. So it was really a wonderful session. Thank you once again for accepting our invitation.
Thank you, Doctor.
Joining us.
Thank you very much, Doctor.
And, hope to look forward for more sessions from you as well in future.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Doctor, for the opportunity and the platform to learn.
We'll be sharing the feedback form through Zoom platform. Kindly attend to the feedback form.
Okay.
All the
I sure will. Thank you.
Attend to the feedback form in the form of polls. It is mandatory for receiving certificate.
All right. Thank you, doctor. So I can go ahead and fill it. It has popped up.
Yeah, you can also fill it. Maybe we can have your perception as well.
Okay, doctor.
How did you feel?
Hello. Pardon, doctor, what did you say?
No, you can, if you want, you can also fill the feedback form.
Okay.
It's optional for you, but if you'd like to, you can attempt.
Okay, I would like to fill it, but there's a time allotted to it. I can have it until the end. I can go ahead and fill it right now.
Yeah, you can. You can fill it right now because it will be closed after some time.
Okay, well, I can see the time going. All right. Thank you so much also, doctor, for giving us the opportunity and for believing in us. Thank you. And I look forward to these collaborations and implementations of some of the things that have been learned. Maybe we have a way to replicate some of those practices in our countries.
Sure, definitely we'll work together and try to disseminate more information, and would like to bring out more practices.
Absolutely.
Participants, quickly fill up the poll.
Pardon?
Not for you, Christina. For the
Okay.
participants to fill up the poll. Have you completed? Okay. In the meanwhile, thank you, Christina.
Thank you so much, doctor.
And we, on behalf of Sri Holistic Health Foundation India and Sri Research Institute Center for Art, Sciences and Wellbeing, and also on behalf of all the participants, we wish you all the success and congratulate you.
Thank you very much.
Sessions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, doctor. Thank you.
We'll be sharing your certificate in WhatsApp after this webinar.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to respond, but the form is not responding to the answers.
Today, because here a lot of exams time, this is exams time. And
Okay.
all the professors, students are all preparing, we all are on exam work. So these days, you know, it's maybe for another 10, 20 days, it will be like this because all will be set for exams.
All right.
And once exams are over, then we can have good strength.
Wow. Well done, sir, for all you're doing and the professionals to learn. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you can mute yourself, Christina. The participants kindly fill up the feedback form shared in the chat box or attend to the poll, or you can attend to both. It's mandatory for receiving the participation certificate. See, many people are not joining late, and some people are not joining in time. This attendance is also mandatory. Kindly join in time so that we can also start in time. And also don't miss the feedback form. We are sharing after sessions are completed, so you can completely concentrate on feedback form and provide your feedback. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us. See you all tomorrow at the same time with the same link with a different topic and speaker.